Hi guys, my name is Annette Greaves and I want to share with you today a presentation I delivered a couple of weeks back at a team training we had here on the Gold Coast around goal setting and goal accomplishment. And we wanted to take a little bit of time and address this concept of goals because in a business like doTERRA, we all know, don't we, that it doesn't matter how amazing our uplines are. And don't we have some extraordinary examples of that in this greater group? We can have incredible uplines, but we also know that the results that we see in our own individual businesses are very much a reflection of the thoughts and feelings that we have and subsequently the actions that we take on a day-to-day basis. So we wanted to spend a little bit of time with Diamond Club and Silver Club kicking off. We wanted to spend a little bit of time on this concept of goal setting and goal accomplishment and address it from a slightly different angle to what you might expect to see in a traditional presentation like this. And what you're about to see is content specifically from Bob Proctor's personal coaching program. Now, if you don't know who Bob Proctor is, I encourage you to Google him. He's considered the world's foremost expert on the human mind and how it works and how our minds help us achieve anything it is that we want. And I started this program as one of Bob's students 3 weeks ago. What are we there? 25th of January. I started beginning of January with him because at the end of last year, 2017, I was reflecting on my business and feeling really disheartened. Not with the oils, not with the business model, but with the results I was seeing in my business. And it really felt to me that I wasn't getting results that were consistent with the amount of action that I was taking, and I didn't know why. But I realized that I was at a pivot point, and I could either choose to begin 2018 kind of feeling a bit disheartened and sort of trying to figure it out, or I could really take the situation I was in by the scruff of the neck, figure out what to do, and step forward with confidence around achieving the goals that were important to me. And as I say, I'm about to share with you content that's been shared with me in the first couple of weeks of this 13-month intensive that I'm on. And as I was thinking about what to share with you as we kick this off, I can already share and say that goal achievement is about so much more than how we write our goals or how frequently we refer back to them or the vision boards that we create. There's an understanding that sits much deeper than that, and I hope that I'll be able to share some of that with you here today. So let's look at what we're going to cover. We're going to look at, to start with, at what the purpose of a goal is. And then I'm going to introduce to you this concept of a stick person and start to build an understanding around how our minds actually work. From there, we'll look at goal setting and how it's different to goal achievement. And then we'll look at the relationship between attitudes and goals. And then I'm going to address for you something that you're probably very familiar with, even if you don't recognize the name. It's called the terror barrier. And then to conclude, we'll go through some steps that you can take to set and achieve the goals that are meaningful to you. So if we begin with what the purpose of a goal is, a proper goal provides us with the necessary incentive to grow. And I'm going to come back to this particular point time and again through the next few minutes as we present this content. Bob often says, people say to him, I can't read somebody else's mind. His argument is we don't have to, because everything that we as individuals have today is a reflection of things we've either decided to do, choices that we've made, or things that we've been conditioned to do by our thoughts and feelings, or perhaps by the environment that we've been brought up in. And he refers a lot to this quote from James Allen that says, "The tool of thought and shaping what it wills brings forth 1,000 joys, 1,000 ills. We think in secret, and it comes to pass. Environment is but our looking glass." And he says that when you become really familiar with this type of thinking and with how the world operates around us, you come to understand that a person's environment is truly, and many times, a reflection of how they think and what they think about, which, when we start to reflect on this in sort of in a new space, it can be very compelling. It can also be quite confronting as we think about what our environments say about us here today. I want to introduce now this concept called the stick person and how our minds actually work. Bob talks a lot about how we think in pictures, but he also says how incredibly difficult it is to take this concept of the mind and start to form an accurate image of what our mind actually is. And he was saying to us, what is your mind? And for me personally, I was thinking, is it my brain? What is it? Is it more than that? I don't know. But this stick person helps to break down some of that content. If we look here, we've got two parts to the mind. Part one is our conscious mind. Part two, underneath it, is our subconscious mind. And along the top here, we've got like these 5 antennae, I suppose you'd call them, and they represent our senses, the things we see, hear, taste, smell, and touch. So how we interact with our physical environment around us. And part one, the conscious mind, we're talking about our thinking mind. And our thinking mind has the ability to accept or reject ideas. If I hold up a picture of a dog and say this is a dog, we can accept it. If I held up that same picture of a dog and said this is a cat, it's our thinking mind that would say, no, that's not a dog, that's a cat. This ability to accept or reject ideas. It's in our thinking mind that we form pictures. If I say apple, think of what comes into your mind. If I say cupcakes, again, an image will appear. And it's our thinking mind too that's home to our intellectual factors. And when we talk about intellectual factors, we're talking about reason, our ability to think things through logically. We're talking about will. Will is the ability to give ourselves a command to do something and then actually do it. We're talking about perception, our ability to see one situation from different points of view. Our memory, our ability to recall facts and information, our intuition. That ability we have to walk into a room or into a situation and think, oh, it feels a bit funny, or this feels good, it feels great. That's our intuition, our ability to tap into feelings and vibrations around us. And of course, our imagination, which is one of the most powerful functions we have as human beings. And Bob would say that all goal achievers have strongly developed intellectual factors. And the lovely thing about our intellectual factors is that they're like muscles. We can strengthen them, and the way we strengthen them is with activity. We can do that. So if we move from the thinking mind over to the down to the subconscious mind, conscious mind on top, down to the subconscious mind underneath, the subconscious mind is our emotional mind. And in human beings, this is our power center. Our subconscious mind has zero ability to reject any idea that's impressed upon it. Remember, we talked about the thinking mind. We could distinguish between a cat and a dog. We could accept or reject. Our emotional mind, our subconscious mind, is a very different beast because it cannot reject images and things that we impress upon it on a regular basis. What happens in our emotional mind is expressed in feelings, and feelings and ideas fixed in our emotional mind become habits. How do we act on habits? It's with our body that we act on habits. And we can see underneath there it says the images we impress on our subconscious mind control the vibrations in our body. Our feelings create the vibration that we have in our body. Feelings, again, come from the emotional mind. So let's take this idea, this stick person, and let's break it down a little bit further, because you can see that we're starting to understand that the mind has two parts, the conscious thinking part and the subconscious feeling part, and it's our body that we use to express what's going on through these two elements. So let's break that down a little bit more. And a great way to do that is to kind of take a moment and step back and look at the difference between goal setting and goal achievement. Goal setting is an intellectual exercise. It means that we use the conscious part of our mind to think about what it is that we want, and we work from there. And I'll show you how we step through that process in a few slides on. Goal achievement, on the other hand, is what Bob calls a universal law. Now, I didn't know what a universal law was, but as at this point in time, my understanding of what it is that goal achievement is a process that works for every single person in every situation, every single time, whether we're focusing on good or whether we're actually focusing on bad and negative ideas and negative feelings. It means that if you are consistently applying this process, this achievement process to yourself, you will achieve whatever it is that you're focusing on, whether it's good or bad. And as he says, it works for every single person in every situation, every single time, which is both incredibly exciting if we're thinking about things that we really, really want. But if we happen to be focusing on things that are negative or not what we want, it can be quite a confronting realization, can't it? So let's look at this. Let's take the relationship between attitude and goal achievement. Let's work this through logically using our stick person. We either choose our thoughts or we accept them from an outside source. Here we are, we're in the conscious mind choosing our thoughts or using that stimuli, our taste, touch, sight, smell, etc. We're accepting something from outside. The conscious mind can accept or reject an idea. We then turn that thought into an image. Again, still in the conscious mind. We think in pictures. We're using the conscious mind. We're turning a thought into an image. When we impress an idea or an image into our subconscious mind, it creates feelings and vibrations. And feelings and vibrations cause us to take action. How do we do that? Through our body. The actions that we take creates the results that we get in our life. And I think for me, when I stopped and thought about this for a moment, I started to understand that it begins in thought, thoughts translate into feelings, feelings and vibrations create or make me want to take action in a specific way. And again, Bob talks in terms of images. He says, if you can understand something, if you can form a clear picture of something in your mind when you're thinking about it, you can really start to understand how it works and how to use it to your advantage. If we take attitude for a moment and we think about that, what comes to mind when we think about attitude? Because he would say it's our attitude that determines whether or not we accomplish our goals. But what is our attitude? If you take a moment here and you think, what is attitude? Is there a clear image that comes to mind for you? Let's take a look at that. Attitude is actually the composite of our thoughts, our feelings, and our actions. It's those three things. And the most beautiful example I've ever heard in terms of trying to describe what a composite was to think about baking a cake. If we sit down with a piece of cake, we don't say great eggs, great flour, great sugar. No, what we say is great cake. It's how these elements come together to create a great outcome. And so it is with attitude. It's how we bring our thoughts, our feelings, and our actions together to provide a really great result. That's what our attitude is. And when we understand that, we can really start to understand the results that we get. And as Bob would say, the only way to improve the results that we're getting in life is to take full responsibility for our attitude. And when we do that, we'll be able to improve our results. We'll start to understand this connection between thoughts in the conscious mind, feelings in the subconscious mind, and then the actions that we take through our body. And I wanted to put this little quote in blue in down here. It says, people are anxious to improve their circumstances, but unwilling to improve themselves. Therefore, they remain bound. And Bob talks about this a lot. He says time and again people talk to me about how desperate they are to change their circumstances. But when it comes to doing the work they need to do to improve themselves, they're less than inspired, and therefore they don't achieve the goals that they set themselves. And if you think back to that very first slide, to that writing that was in green, the purpose of the goal, the purpose of a proper goal is to provide you with the incentive to grow. Through this ability to improve ourselves, that we start to become able to achieve the goals that we set ourselves. Does that make sense? I hope so. So here's this concept. It's called the doTERRA barrier. Now you might not be familiar with this term, but I'm fairly sure that you'll be familiar with the feelings around the doTERRA barrier. Let me do my best to explain it for you here. Left hand side of the page, we've got current thinking. This is how we behave today. We've got current thoughts, conscious mind, current feelings, subconscious mind, current actions we take gives us the results we see today. Now, for many of us, those results might not be what we want, but we're familiar, we're comfortable with everything that's going on around us, and sometimes comfort is it's an anchor for what we're looking to achieve, particularly if we're striving to move forward and to embrace change. We then get exposed to a new idea. Think for a moment about when you were first presented with the idea of running a doTERRA business and the incredible opportunities that could be on offer to you. Think about whatever that leadership role was, where you looked at the monthly income and thought, wow, even on an annual level, perhaps that's extraordinary. And you started to think about what that might mean for you in your life if you were achieving that monthly. That's a new idea right here. And why? The terror barrier over here on the right is when we take a new idea and it comes up against our current conditioning, our current feelings, the things that we have emotionally in play. What that creates when we have a new idea and current conditioning is huge resistance, an enormous amount of discomfort, and often kind of stickiness around, oh, I really want to do this, I really want to pursue this new idea, but it's really hard and I'm feeling really uncomfortable. And oftentimes what happens in that terror barrier moment where the new idea hits the current conditioning that we have, we step back and we focus back here again on the current thinking. Again, not because it's actually what we want, but because it's comfortable, and because when we step back away from this new idea, it becomes comfortable again very, very quickly. This is an incredibly uncomfortable state of things, and I'm not talking about knowing we need to do something and perhaps being a little bit lazy. I'm talking about being up against something that feels new and unfamiliar and scary, and you're just really struggling to break through. Recognize that that's the terror barrier in play, and in a slide or two, I'm going to talk to you about what we actually do when we come up against it so that we can step forward, because over here on the right-hand side of the terror barrier is what we call freedom. New ideas, new feelings, new results. And the incredible thing about this process is that we're always going through it if we're in a stage of growth. We can have a new idea, new thoughts, new feelings, we can be taking action, but that then will become our current thinking. And again, we'll find ourselves when a new idea comes up against us again, we're at the terror barrier again. So we never kind of move beyond the terror barrier. We're always going through it if we're constantly exposing ourselves to new ideas and challenges. We just have to figure out how to identify it when we're faced with it, and then what to do to take steps forward in spite of it, so that we're over here in this quadrant called freedom. Does that make sense? We'll go through the steps through the terror barrier in just a minute. So, how do we set and achieve the goals that are really important to us? Step number one, we decide what it is we really want. Remember, as we said, goal setting is an intellectual exercise. You don't have to know how to do it. The only question is, can you see yourself achieving it? Now, we're talking about goal setting here. It's an intellectual exercise. Goal achievement, we said, is that universal law. You're going to have to not only believe it, you're going to have to expect that it's coming to you in order to accomplish it. But at step one here, it's an intellectual exercise. Decide what it is that you really want. You know, I was listening to a presentation on YouTube a few weeks back, and it was a lady talking about she got involved in doTERRA and she felt that she'd been around people who were really inspired by leadership rankings, whatever it was at the time. And she said that she tried to pick that up and run with it. But what she really came to understand was she wanted a job that gave her a bit of what she called, I think she called it pocket money, but that she could then take holidays with her kids. When her kids were on holiday, she could kind of just pause, hold the business, and then come back to it during the term time. Now, there is nothing wrong with that. at all. But what she had to get really clear on was that although there were a lot of people around her talking about leadership ranks, it actually, at this point in time in her life, it wasn't actually what she wanted. And then she had to be comfortable enough to articulate that so that the people around her could react accordingly or respond accordingly. So after we've decided what it is that we really want, we have to make an irrevocable decision to achieve it. This I will do. And remember, we're talking still about the conscious mind. We're talking about those intellectual factors. Will is an intellectual factor. This I will do, the ability to give yourself a command and carry it out. We're still working with the conscious mind. Step number 3, again, we're still in the conscious mind here, but we're starting to paint a picture. We're starting to bring in different ideas. We want to write what our goal is. We want to write it out. We want to describe it in vivid detail. We want to write it in the present tense. I am so happy and grateful now that, and then you can insert your goal or series of goals if it's relevant for you. And we want to make sure that the goal that we set ourselves is what we call SMART. It's a SMART target. It's specific, it's measurable, it's achievable, it's realistic, and it's timely. You know, it's all well and good to want to be, to want to be a presidential diamond. But if we're currently an executive and we want to be a presidential diamond by Tuesday and we've got one workshop with 3 people between now and then, it's not necessarily going to be realistic. So we want to kind of touch on the things that we set for ourselves to make sure that they achieve these parameters. And when we've done that, we can start to build emotion into our picture in step 4. And it's here that we start moving from the conscious mind into the subconscious mind. Remember, our subconscious mind is where we feel. It's where we create feelings. How do we do this? By repeatedly visualizing ourselves achieving the goal we've set. Think about, how are we feeling? We're creating emotion. What are we wearing when we do it? Where are we? What song is playing? We can write it out. We can read it out loud to ourselves, because remember, over here in this little yellow box, the subconscious mind cannot distinguish fact from fiction. It has no ability to reject anything we impress upon it. So that is wonderful when we're working on something really productive and really powerful. But let's just also take a moment here and remember how destructive it could be if we're constantly reinforcing or impressing negative ideas and negative thoughts into our subconscious mind. Does that make sense? Let's move on from there. We've built emotion into the picture now. We're now in the subconscious mind. Here we go, the terror barrier. What do we do when we hit it? We understand and we acknowledge it when we hit it. This is about taking our power back in this step. How do we do that? We acknowledge it. Thank you, I've got this is a great turn of phrase. I love it. Thank you, I've got this. Now get lost. And then ask yourself, what 3 things can I do right now to keep me moving toward my goal? And then do those 3 things. Take action. Do those 3 things. They don't have to be big things. If you're trying to build your website and you can't get it live, don't focus on getting it live. Focus on 3 little things that you can do that get you a step closer to where you're going. Because when we take action, we remain on target to achieve our goal. And then number 6, as it says, consistently take action. Take action every single day. And how do we take action? We take action with our body. You can see here, I very eloquently put, think about the aeroplane. I'll get to that in just a second. I was trying to figure out how to explain this idea to you without standing in front of you. I hope I've kind of achieved that on the next slide. But at this point, we're choosing. We either step forward into growth or we step back into safety. And that's a quote from Abraham Maslow. But let's take this consistent action. And my apologies for the really simplistic graphic here, but I just couldn't figure out how to bring this together for you in a useful way without being in front of you. But if we think about it, we've got a runway in front of us here, and my mouse is stuck. There we go. So call this a runway for an aeroplane. And directly in front of us is our goal. And what we have to do is we have to focus on where we're going. So think about being in an aeroplane and know that once you take off, you're going to a destination that's some point down the track. Let's say, for example, let's pick Melbourne. Let's pick Melbourne. If I take off, let's say that in front of me, if I fly in a directly straight line, I'm going to hit Melbourne in 2 hours' time. What needs to happen is that we need to think about keeping on track, taking action all the time. Now, we have a choice. As with any goal, there is always a period of time between when we set the goal and when we accomplish it. So, what we need to do is during the course of that time or that journey, if we're an aeroplane, if we're thinking about that analogy, is that we have to think about what we might come up against that has the potential to blow us off track. Now, I'm going to take my sticky mouse here. Here it is. Over here on the left-hand side, we can look at being blown off track. Perhaps we've got a wind coming in, it blows us off track. We're now off track with our goal. We need to take action, take action, take action to get ourselves back on track. If we don't, if we fall back into our current thinking and to the things that we know and understand today, we end up with a gap between where we are, where we're heading, and where we actually are. There's a gap here. I want it to be here. I'm actually behind my goal. If I stay on track, if I take 3 little action steps every time I feel buffered, every time I feel challenged, I stay on track and potentially I even surpass my target. There's the potential for that because I'm moving toward freedom. Does that make sense in terms of hitting that terror barrier, what you need to do and how it actually operates to your advantage if you're consistently taking action to achieve the goal that's important to you? And that might be a leadership ranking here in doTERRA. Does that make sense? I hope it does. So let's think about the goals that we set ourselves. Let's think about them being smart. Here's just a simple example that I came up with. I am so happy and grateful now that I am and then you can insert what's important to you. Banking, making it measurable. On or before, inserting a specific date. It's in the current tense. It's where I am today. It's making it measurable in terms of money that we're achieving. It's making it timely in terms of a time that it needs to be accomplished by. So that's an example of a goal statement that you could use perhaps in this business. But you can write statements similar to this for any type of goal that you set yourself, whether it's health and fitness or business or family time, whatever it is. But I hope that that's a useful example. And as we finish this, I wanted to share a lovely, I suppose it's a poem by Helen Steiner Rice that Bob refers back to a lot. It's called Climb Until Your Dreams Come True. And I think it will really resonate with a lot of us here as we're kicking off Diamond Club and Silver Club and really striving to step into these leadership roles. It says, often your tasks will be many and more than you think you can do. Often the road will be rugged and the hills insurmountable too. But always remember, the hills ahead are never as steep as they seem. So with faith in your heart, start upward and climb till you reach your dream. For nothing in life that is worthy is ever too hard to achieve if you have the courage to try it and you have the faith to believe. For faith is a force that is greater than knowledge or power or skill, and many defeats turn to triumph if you trust in God's wisdom and will. For faith is a mover of mountains. There is nothing that God cannot do. So start out today with faith in your heart and climb till your dreams come true. By Helen Steiner Rice. And I thought that was really powerful. And I hope that in concluding this presentation, it's kind of given you some little nuggets, some little bits of food for thought as you kind of start on the journey that's ahead of all of us in the next 4 months. I hope it's useful. Anyway, it's shared with love and I look forward to seeing you on the mountain. Take care. Lots of love. Bye for now.